Hi, I'm Laurier Couture, author of Instead of Medicating and Punishing, and the upcoming book Nurturing and Empowering Our Sons. Today we're going to be discussing 9 different ideas for securing childcare so that you can homeschool or unschool your son or daughter. This is a very important topic and one of the biggest obstacles that parents have when they want to homeschool their child. They think, well, both of us work outside the home, or I'm a single working parent, and so it can't happen for me. It wouldn't work. And so I'm here to tell you, yes, you can make it work. When I homeschooled my son, I was a single working parent on a very tight budget, and I just didn't see public school as an option. When you stop seeing public school as an option for your child care, then you are able to really pull resources from everywhere. So I'm here to help you with 9 of them, and I used many of these myself, especially in the beginning. So let's jump right into these 9 different options for childcare so that you can homeschool your son or daughter. The first option is, can your child stay home alone for a couple hours or even the whole day? This depends on a few different factors. Number 1, your child's age. Number 2, your state's law on the age a child has to be in order to be alone. 3, is your child mature enough and responsible enough to handle that? 4, does your child have any special needs that could affect that? And 5, does your child have a recent history especially, of at-risk or high-risk or self-harming behavior? So all of those factors are important. There is no one single blanket age across all 50 states explaining to us what age is legal to leave children home alone. It ranges as young as 10 years old in some states to 16 years old. So it's important to find that out. It's also important, again, to be sure your child can handle the responsibility and will not be at risk. It's important to have a backup plan if your child does have any factors that could impact his or her ability to stay home alone safely. For my son Bryson, when he and I decided that he was ready to take some of that responsibility, we started out by I left him alone for 15 minutes at a time, and then a half an hour, and then an hour. And eventually we worked up to 3 hours in the beginning. So this came after a time, though, where we started out with a child care plan. The second option is there a family member who could help out? The first and obvious choice is your partner, your child's father or mother, whoever is not the parent working. Is it possible that both parents can stay home? Is it possible that one parent can be working, another parent home, and then switch those schedules? Is it possible that both parents can work in the home and at different times? So always see if you can find childcare within the family first. If it isn't possible for both mom and dad to work that out, or for one parent to be home while another one is at work, or if you are a single working parent, then tap into other family members. Is it possible that another family member who may not be working 5 days a week could take your child one of those days? Are there grandparents or great-grandparents that could take your child 5 days a week, 2 days a week, 1 day a week? Are there different family members that could take your child on a different day, or even 2 different family members in 1 day? When my son and I first started our homeschooling journey, he had a different arrangement every day, and some days 2 different arrangements, so that we could make it work. So if you can, start with the family first. The third option are friends. Are there any friends that you have that are not working 5 days a week? Could they provide childcare 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 5 days a week for you? Do you have friends that run a business, possibly a landscaping business, and your child could help out? I know for our family that was one of the options that we fortunately had as well, that I had a few friends that were able to take him. And sometimes I had friends that normally did work all the time, but they had days off that they could take my son to a special event for me. Option number 4, this is something that I had to do for a while. Can you take your child to work? Is that a possibility for you? Do you have a work situation where you travel part of the time? Could your child come on some of those travels? I was fortunate that one of the jobs that I had, I was doing meetings at various locations around the state, and I was able to take my son to those meetings, and he was able to be in another conference room while I was in meetings. One of my jobs, I was running parenting classes, and so therefore my son was able to be in the childcare for those parenting classes. In my job as a mental health counselor, my son was able to go to the local library for a little while when he was a little bit older while I was seeing clients. So there are all kinds of different options. We even had a situation where one of my bosses was able to find some work for my son to do. I was able to take my son to conferences, meetings, workshops. If you have a flexible job, that may be an option for you. Option 5. If you are not able to bring your child to work, is it possible for you to get a new job or a second job? I was able to take a supplementary job that allowed me more freedom with my hours and more freedom to take my son to work with me. Option 6 is, can you take flexible hours at work or can you start your own business? I actually did all of those things. I was at one point working the equivalent of 4 different jobs. I was a mental health counselor, I was running parenting groups, and then under my own business, I was doing consulting and workshops and writing, freelance writing. It was worth every moment of the extra time so that I had that time with my son to engage in the fun activities we were doing, take him to homeschool groups, involve myself in his growing process and in his learning process. It was worth it. I worked really hard, but I wouldn't trade that for the world now. If it is possible for you to work from home, that is definitely something to look into. That will take some time to build. So in the meantime, is it possible for you to get more flexible hours at work? Or if both parents live at home, is it possible that both parents can get flexible hours so that the hours can converge so that your child has somebody home at all times? There are many homeschooling families that start a family business with everybody involved. That's certainly an option as well. When I was doing public speaking, my son came along with me, and at his choice, he was speaking with me. He ended up becoming a public speaker because he wanted to speak with me. So again, creativity, flexibility, and talk to your child about his or her ideas. It's amazing the ideas kids have. It was Bryson's idea to come with me on public speaking gigs, and it ended up being something that he enjoyed doing himself. Option 7. This is an interesting one that not a lot of people know about. Do you have a local university or college in your area that has early childhood education as one of their degrees or programs? If that's the case, you may be able to hire a college student to provide some childcare during the day when they're not in their classes. We did have 2 college students that worked with Bryson for a very short time. They were very kind and he liked them as people, but he just personally did not think that that was a good arrangement. He just felt that they really weren't dynamic enough, or they didn't understand how homeschooling worked, and he missed his mom during the day. So that was a very short-term arrangement for us. We only did that for about a month, but it is an option that you could look into and see if you have a better match than we had. Option 8 happens, it's sort of a catch-22. Once you're already in the homeschool community and have been homeschooling, and you start to attend homeschool groups and meet others through a homeschool coalition, you can then start to trade childcare with other families. This is something that was invaluable to our family over time, and you end up getting into these great routines where one parent may take all the kids to one event while another parent is working, and then the working parent then takes children to an event on a different day. That worked out great for us. We ended up starting our own club. Bryson started a Bionicle and then a gaming club, and we would take other people's children to that, and then I would drop my child off at one of those parents' homes, and then I'd go to work. We had the most creative schedule. I remember there was this one particular time frame on a Tuesday where I would go to work in the morning and see a couple clients. Then I'd go home, I'd make lunch, and my son and I would go to a homeschool group. Then I would either drop my son off with one of his homeschool friends, or he'd choose to go home. And then I'd have to go all the way back to work and then work till the evening, then come home. It was worth it though. During that time, sometimes my son had homeschool friends over, and sometimes, and this was as he got older. There are so many different options that open up once you're already in the homeschool community. Homeschoolers tend to be very responsible, so I had no problem with a house full of homeschoolers while I was at work when my son was 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, because they were responsible young people. And my son's friends' parents, same thing. They had no problem with him going over there, whether they were home or not. So when you get to know the families, you get to know the kids, and you do a lot of taxiing around and you get to know them, you know who to trust and who maybe that wouldn't be a great option to have them come over when you're not home. Option 9 works really well for short periods of time. Is there an activity that your child could do regularly, or an event, or some sort of a program, or a class that they may want to take in the community? While you're at work, they could be at one of those activities. Sometimes another homeschooling parent could provide transportation for that. So that's another option that we used. We used almost every single one of these 9 options during different times. Obviously, as your child gets older, your child will become more responsible and be able to handle some of that ability to be alone more and being able to go out there and be more self-directed in the community. My son did a lot on his own, where he would get on his bike and he would go to local towns, book himself on the radio, he would do musical gigs, he'd go to friends' houses, he'd go to a family member's house, in addition to all the arrangements we already had. When my son was having some real struggles with his mental health issues, those were times where we had to really pull back on him being alone. So in those moments, we had to really fill in the child care gaps at those times. So make sure that your program, whatever it is flexible so that you can pull back and add in child care when it's needed. It's really important that kids are not spending 5 days a week by themselves in the home all the time without your intervention, because that defeats the purpose of homeschooling. We know of kids that was the case, and those kids tended to be very depressed and really wanted to go back to school. So it's important that they have other activities and other friends and other families, or your own family, to connect with. So your homeschooling program should be dynamic. If you can't be there all 5 days of the week, make sure somebody else can, so your child can balance between solitude and enough solitude to be able to create, but at the same time lots of family connection, lots of connection with friends, with other homeschoolers, in events, opportunities, and things to do in the community. So I hope that these 9 options for childcare are helpful to you in being able to put together a program that's going to be dynamic and fun and creative and filled with connection, so that you can spend as much time as possible with your child when you can be flexible with your work hours, and if you can start a business. The ultimate goal is to try to pull in more and more time with your child, but in the beginning, getting all the child care in place, even if it has to be a different arrangement every day, just to get them out of the public school and into homeschooling. It starts to get easier to adjust over time. The key is getting started. Keep in mind my golden rule if you get into a rut trying to figure out childcare. Public school should not be seen as an option for childcare. If you're sending your child to school just because of childcare issues, make it in your mind not an option, and then the ideas will come. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you for my next video. Thank you.